Welcome to ILTV's Weekly Insider. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this week's topic is the ongoing war and the possibility of expansion. Week 9 of the war in Gaza, which marked a week of intense fighting. And just today, IDF Chief of Staff Miri Eisin and Shin Bet Director Ronen Bar held a situational assessment with commanders deep inside the Gaza Strip in Khan Yunis. The message was clear, that Israeli control in Gaza is spreading quickly. The IDF is continuing its mission to eliminate Hamas leaders and bring about the total eradication of this terror group. And meanwhile, in the north, since October 7th, Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging daily deadly cross-border fire. And this past week, the intensity has only increased, as has the rhetoric. Hezbollah is now complaining that the IDF is escalating attacks deeper into Lebanon. IDF Chief Halevi signaled that there is indeed a change in policy, saying we understand that this must end with a very clear change in the current situation. And so joining me now to answer a lot of questions about the war are Fleur Hassan Nahum, Jerusalem Deputy Mayor, co-founder of the Israel-UAE Business Council and co-founder of the Gulf Israel Women's Forum, and Colonel Miri Eisin, Director of the International Institute of Counter-Terrorism at Reichman University. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
So Miri, let's start with you, and we'll start, of course, with the main front, the war in Gaza. You know, every day we're seeing more indications that Israel, that the IDF is advancing and gaining more control over Hamas strongholds. So how soon do you think we are to winning this war?
We already are in the midst of winning it. I think that we have an erroneous way of looking what it means to win. It's like everybody expects it to end, I don't know, with a checkmate. We're talking about a dirty, harsh war that Hamas initiated over 2 months ago. We're talking about a dirty, tough war that Hamas prepared for years. And because of that, our dismantling, both to save Israeli soldiers' lives, but also to save Gazan civilian lives, takes a long time. So I can't give you a date. I can't say it's a week or even a month. This is something systematic that we are going to continue to do until we eradicate as much as we can of these military terror capabilities. So no projection, but it still is going to take time.
And Fleur, you know, along the lines of what Miri just says, Hamas is a terror group, but it's also an ideology, you know, sort of like ISIS or the Nazis. So, you know, we may be able to eradicate their military capabilities eventually, and we may eradicate their leadership, but this ideology, I mean, are we going to be able to eradicate or to defeat that?
You know, I keep hearing this all the time, and the ideology doesn't come in a vacuum. The ideology doesn't come from nowhere. The ideology comes from the indoctrination of the Palestinian people that has two expressions, main expressions. One is in their media, and this was an Oslo commitment to stop the incitement in the media, not just of the Palestinians, but of many Arab countries around, including Egypt, and they never did it. And the second is the educational system, which is actually funded by the UN through UNRWA. So UNRWA actually contradicts itself and the values of the UN, because instead of taking us closer to peace, it's taking us further away from peace by teaching a curriculum that is glorifying martyrs. It's incitement against Israel. In their geography, Israel doesn't exist. Jews are seen as a subhuman race. And so if we're going to talk about the ideology, there are things that feed that ideology. And if we want to talk about eventual peace and coexistence with the Palestinian people, we really have to eradicate those channels of poison, which every generation anew get fed with from the minute they're born.
Absolutely. And, you know, I also want to turn now to reports that we're hearing last night and today, reports that Israel is willing to once again return to negotiations for another operational pause, let's call it, in exchange for the hostages. So, Miri, how would another pause potentially affect this ongoing fighting, this momentum that we have moving forward?
Israel has put two objectives to this war, and I want to remind everybody this war started by Hamas, started with a horrific barbaric attack, started with the kidnapping of an enormous amount of people. And we've gotten back less than half of those that we know are there. We don't know their condition. We don't know who they are. We assume everything, but it's not like Hamas have shared with us any information. They are a terror organization. So when we talk about that, we don't hold the cards. That's exactly what terror organizations do. They take hostages because they see them as a bargaining chip. They see them, and I'm going to be rude about this, as a get out of jail free card. And so in our need as a country, as a commitment to bring back all of the hostages, and I'm going to include into that those who were held before October 2023, because they've taken more in the past. These are things that we need to get back as a country, as a nation. It's part of our commitment. So yes, we're willing to talk about that. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to stop the military operation. I'll even say with my non-French au contraire, we are using the military capabilities to impact the Hamas terrorists, to make them change. And in a way, I think that a lot of the leakage coming out right now is misinformation from the Hamas side, trying to force Israel's hand because they want to come back and talk about a humanitarian pause. They want to do so because they are being crushed militarily.
And now, Fleur, I do want to circle back to what you were saying just before about the education and sort of this ideology of Hamas. And so it leads me to the question, how do you envision, let's say, Gaza the day after the war?
So this is a question that everybody's asking. And this is a question that sometimes we don't think about in Israel too long term, because we're always trying to put out fires. And this actually, maybe I'm being idealistic, but I see actually the Abraham Accords coming in very useful the day after we eliminate or we dismantle Hamas. First of all, because most of the Abraham Accords countries and Saudi Arabia, which hasn't joined but was on the way to joining the Abraham Accords, they themselves have gotten rid of Muslim Brotherhood and the fundamentalist groups